Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Our World Today, the Unionist perspective discussion. Today is a little bit special. Actually, it's a transgender rights and news special because we've seen in the past few weeks a lot of things happening for the transgender community, and we just wanted to unpack the healing and all of the things that have been going on in the US about that. And who better to start this discussion than our very own twin flames, Isaiah and Sage, that are going to just introduce us to what has been going on. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, basically, it's been going on for a while, like the last few years have been a time of let's say more intensive contrast and healing and kind of like social dialogue about transgender people and LGBTQ people in general, I'd say ever since 2017, because during the Trump administration, during the Obama administration, there were a lot of advances for the LGBTQ community's rights. But then during the Trump administration, there's a lot of pushback against it. And there kind of has been since then, but more so at the state levels. And so, yeah, there's been things like, well, the first of all, debates about if it's fair to have transgender women in women's sports, like with cisgender women. And there's also been discussion about should trans men be included in men's sports too, which is kind of a bit of a different discussion, I believe, but we can get into that. There's been all kinds of laws passed in different states, some saying that it's a crime for doctors to provide gender-affirming hormone therapy to minors, and also surgery. Though gender-affirming surgeries, some of them aren't even performed on kids younger than 18, just so you know. There have been, oh my gosh, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff. I like blanking on it, even though the drag laws, yeah. Even though there's so many things, I just blank in it. Yes, the law in Tennessee, which was blocked recently by a federal judge in Tennessee, though, saying that, just saying that male or female impersonation is adult cabaret performance in all cases, and it can only be performed in an adult venue, and it can't be performed in front of children, all of this type of stuff, and we've also seen how Drag Queen Story Hour has attracted all kinds of protests and stuff like that, because that's been happening in different parts of the country. So yeah, there's just a lot of different things happening, and it kind of is all the LGBT community together, and just how society is responding to it, and just how we're feeling about it and how we're navigating it and stuff. So
yeah,
it's been great, but it's okay. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of healing about it too. Mainly what I wanted to share was I've been healing, feeling that I was bad as being who I am, or that there was something wrong, and society even puts on you that you're not a safe person to be around children as a transgender person or as an LGBTQ person. And because I think it's I don't really know why exactly, and I can't confidently say. I can't confidently say why. I'm kind of thinking maybe because they see it's kind of lumping together different things that they see as sexually deviant. So it's kind of lumping it, because sometimes LGBT people get lumped together with people who do bestiality. And it's kind of like saying like
I think it's also the
one thing leads to
they think
another.
that LGBT people groom kids and
to become
gay or
LGBT.
trans, which is not true, of course.
Yeah.
So let's unpack
There's
a
a lot of
few things.
sorry, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
lay it out so
No,
we know
no.
everything.
Yeah, no problem.
But it is, yes.
Yeah. No, you're totally okay and right to just like put it on the table. And I just feel like we could unpack things so that energetically and emotionally, and even for people's comprehension, it could be feel clearer because there is a lot of heavy energy to
Yeah.
move through, obviously, with that. And so, well, first of all, my first thought is that in France, I know it's very difficult to have gender affirming processes done. You have to go through a lot of like administrative and medical steps to start your transgender journey. And so I don't know how it is in the US. But just to put that on the table, I think that's a first myth, I guess, to put down about like how the medical system could like kind of end out gender affirming care so easily in the minds of people when it's actually not that easy. And so, yeah, I wanted to know if you knew a lot about that, wanted to share your side of the story on that. So,
How to get gender affirming care, like in the US,
or how it is,
or how it is. Yeah, it's I mean, it's like it depends on like what state you're in. And it depends on what insurance provider that you have, because in the US it's like there's the market of insurances and stuff. But so there are some states like Colorado where we live where the state requires all insurance providers to cover gender affirming procedures for trans people. There are some states where that's not the case. Even if the state doesn't require it, though, a lot of insurance companies will still cover it, depending, but some don't. It just depends. So, but at that point, it's just a matter of like having the money to pay for it out of pocket, which can be, it can be challenging for people. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think the medical system, I've tended to think that with the medical system, they kind of have a feeling of like needing additional verification with transgender people to see if like who they feel themselves to be is really accurate. When I first started transitioning, and I think you had to go through that too, like you have to have like, a letter from like a psychologist saying, I had a session with this person and they have gender dysphoria and they are committed to living as this other gender. Like they're down with it, so like give them the meds, I sign off on it. So, and I've had different feelings about that through the years. Like at first I mainly felt like I wasn't trusted to just know who I was, because at that point I knew who I was, like, especially with the mirror exercise and with Jeff and Shalea's teachings. Like if I had any fears about it or doubts, I could just mirror that and I could heal it. And I had come to a point where I knew, but even people who don't have the spiritual work can know, like, this is what feels good to me, this is what doesn't feel good to me, and then they go for it. I do see there is value in being certain about it, because you don't want to, it does seriously alter your body. So you do want to be certain about it. There are people who have a lot of internal conflict or just questions, or they're just exploring and they aren't certain that they want to take such a definite decision. So I actually get that. And you do want to have some feeling of certainty, because it's more compassionate, for yourself, rather than having to like go in and then feel like, oh, I think that wasn't right, and back out. So I kind of get it. But that's my experience with getting the care.
I feel like the medical community in general Yeah, there's a lot of, you have to go through a lot of verifications to have surgery.
Yeah.
You have to have a hormone therapy doctor or your PC or just any doctor basically who's been prescribing you hormones, and then you have to have a mental health therapist. And then for later surgeries like bottom surgeries, you have to have two mental health therapists sign off on surgery for you, plus your doctor.
Yeah.
And it's just, you do, of course, you want to be certain if you're going to, be, making these changes or whatever. But I feel like the medical community in general, there's just a lot of barriers and gates to people getting the care that they want and need for their gender affirming care.
Mhm.
And there's just a consciousness there that is
Yeah.
more like gatekeeping than like accepting and like, okay, we're supporting you in your journey rather than keeping you from it and basically thinking, there's just that consciousness there. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, I feel that like it's good to be clear and to seek clarity, but I think the initial premise of it that we have to have, I guess starting with ourselves, is just being like, I trust what I feel and I affirm what I feel, and I accept myself and support myself, because you've got to start with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess there needs to be a balance between like what feels good and also the support in each steps that you get from the system. And that actually makes me feel about like a spiritual component that may be deep at the core for people who think that they need to put barriers towards like transgender people and gender affirming care. And it makes me feel of like Jeff and Shalea's sermon on abortion.
Mhm.
So bear with me. I don't know how clear I'm going to get about that, but it's just a thought. It's that like the people that are very sensitive about abortion and the reason why it's so such a brutal discussion is that they feel that they will be damning souls by the act of having abortion or getting abortion on a soul that is in your body. And so that's an understandable fear, but it's kind of misplaced. And what I think about transgender like laws is that, especially how they address it towards kids, is a kind of this fear that they'll lose their innocence. And I
Mhm.
think you talked about it a little bit, Sage. It's kind of like fear that they'll lose their innocence and that it won't ever get back to them again. Like it won't ever be found again if they go through that process of being
Yeah.
in contact with like transgender people, or if they go through that process of like gender affirmation as well. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. It's very sensitive, but it does feel like there's this fear, and maybe that's why the barriers are there, you know?
Yeah. I do have one thing too, that sometimes, the system kind of like responds to upsets that you have, and by kind of trying to put a barrier up to you. Like, Jeff and Shaleia talked about how like early on in their relationship when they were together, they would get stopped by the police all the time because they had upsets with police and with the authority, and they kind of felt mad or something, some sort of upset at the system, and how the system targets that and kind of like will try to like
Mhm.
Clamp down on that. And the thing about it is, it's not that it's wrong to have those feelings, it's just that progress is made when you feel peaceful, and when you're not feeling peaceful, you're just generating more of that thing that you don't want. I feel like one opportunity for healing with LGBT people is just to know that we don't need the validation of anyone else coming out as LGBTQ. Because a lot of times, like the conservative narrative could be somewhat of a mirror of the LGBTQ community's desire for validation and to have more LGBTQ people openly out there, because they tend to say things like, you're trying to recruit children, you're trying to recruit them into your, perverted army, and that kind of thing. And I'm just like, that's not exactly what it is, but maybe sometimes for some LGBTQ people, there's a feeling of like, I want to see more LGBTQ people out and in the open, because it's validating for us. And you don't want that. Like, you don't need that as validation.
Mhm.
Like, your identity is valid regardless. But on the other hand, like, it's a very divine thing to shine your light and to say, like, I am good and I'm divine and this is who I am, and if you're also, it's good for you to be you, whoever you are, basically. And that should be the point of it, and that is the point of it. That's the point of like us existing and telling others like, this is who you are, and you should feel free to be who you are, whether you are, cisgender, trans, or gay or straight or whatever, all that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also feel like the reason we are seeing a lot of this backlash or like the pushback, is because I feel like it's actually a sign of like a breakthrough, or like,
Yeah.
LGBTQ, the community is progressing and moving forward, and there's like we're on the precipice of a breakthrough of
Yeah.
like where everyone would be accepted and these things would move forward, and we would have that acceptance in the system too. And I feel like it's like this ego freak out that we're seeing from like the law and the system. And I think it does have to do with what you were saying, Noreen, is about like, people believing that, um, if they don't understand like what it is to be transgender or what it is to be LGBT, they would believe like, that your innocence is being taken from you, when it's actually the opposite, because you're actually accepting who you are and embracing how you were created,
Yeah.
and living your life from an authentic place, which is all that a trans or LGBT person is doing. But yeah, I think that's why we're seeing this backlash is it's just misunderstanding. It's a fear of like not really understanding like what's really happening, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful what you shared. Yeah. Nadia, wants to just say something?
I'm glad you guys brought that up and reflected it with abortion, because it shows the length that people go through to control one's life and can actually think that they can control someone's life. And another point that I was thinking of when Isaiah brought up that, just the fact that you would be okay sexualizing a drag show, but little children going into pageants that are hypersexualized, not many people are bringing that up and seeing that that's an issue too. Like their mothers, their parents are forcing them into things that they may not be wanting to do. That is a real issue compared to someone who's expressing themselves. I just find like there's two very opposite things going on. and we're looking at this direction when we really could be looking at the whole situation. And when you were speaking about the ego, going crazy, that's very familiar to how when someone is going through their journey of discovering their core, they feel this resistance because they think that at their core, there might be something bad. There might be something that they're terrified of looking at. But really, as they dig deeper, they find like the divine in them. So I think there's this resistance to going deeper into the core of people's truth and recognizing that it's actually really pure. It's actually very innocent and just like an expression of oneself. So.
Yeah, I think it's just important to affirm that, like, you've done nothing wrong, like by being gay or by being trans, like you didn't do something wrong and everything. So
Yeah, I know. I feel this is very very well timed because I was feeling Innocence today, and I feel like we've had this come up throughout the years of our discussions with so many like minorities, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of LGBTQ people, and just feeling like, but I feel this change, where like 2 years ago we felt powerless. Right now we're feeling like we're still feeling empowerment and feeling of innocence and the upsets, but there's like more of this like peaceful place inside. Like it's like we're on the other side of the spectrum finally, where we're feeling empowerment, we're already feeling empowered, and so we're deepening that. I think that's pretty beautiful, at least spiritually for me. And yeah, also I think like we tend to forget, maybe because we're deep in the spiritual journey, that we live in a society that is dominated by the monotheist religions and Christianity, Islam, and so they do believe that we have only one life. And that we either go to paradise or to hell after that. And so that the body that you're born into in this life is just the body that God created you with. Or we actually know, and some religions know, and we discover more and more that actually it's a body that we choose for this life, and it's not necessarily how we were divinely created. And I think that's what people are waking up to by waking up to their transgender journey, is like, oh, it doesn't feel good. And it's not about like, you'll get through this life and you'll be happy afterwards. No, it's about affirming their change and power now, And so I feel that's perfect with our topic, like transcending the stigma. Like, I want to feel good now, It's more than just physical.
No, yeah. And that's why, like, well, I guess, yeah, like it's true, like I always resonate with that I incarnated this way, and it was like my choice to, for various reasons. And because like a lot of upsets come up of being like, how would I feel like if I had a female body, like, that kind of thing. And I would heal through this stuff of being like, I would feel unsafe, or I would feel this or I feel that. And so, or I would have feelings like, I feel like men, or like the divine masculine is like the masculine as like a whole is going to abuse me, and I would have like I've healed through all kinds of stuff, like this battered wife energy and stuff, and I'm just like, why would I have these kinds of feelings and upsets if I like didn't have like past lives? It doesn't make any sense, or I guess maybe seeing it growing up, but I wouldn't have like identified with it anyway, if I weren't a woman or whatever. So, but yeah, it's like, so anyway, I think that is the key, is knowing that, like, so you might want to change your body, and which is fine. And like the current body that you're in, like, you might want it to be different in various ways. That doesn't mean that your current form, like in your current form, like you're not divine. And that like there's actually nothing wrong with you and like you're lovable right now. So that's the thing, like it is what's going on in society with the laws and all of the stuff with trans people, like, you know, like the demonization of trans and LGBTQ people. You know, it's a reflection of how we often we feel about ourselves, because we can feel that in ourselves sometimes, like that, you know, my body is like wrong, or I don't love myself because of the body I have. And Isaiah and I have healed through this a lot. And it allows us to view this whole situation with more compassion and to feel more at peace with it, because we know that we can just take care of it. Like our peace is to heal ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And I know that like when I heal myself and when I love myself, whatever people say doesn't affect me. Like, I mean, it never really truly affects me. I'm saying like there's nothing to, the more that you heal, the less inside you that there is to trigger. And so the more that we heal as a collective, the less society will have to like poke, basically. Like there won't be a sensitive spot to poke. And so often people just respond to that. Like they do, like the energy inside of you, they respond to. And so if they see, oh, this person feels like they're not divine, or this person feels like there's something wrong with them, people go for that. Like they're like, oh, you feel that way? Well, then I'm going to take out my own insecurities on you because you accept that. Whereas if you try to do that with someone who doesn't feel insecure, it's really awkward, because then you're just putting your own insecurity on display. Like you're just saying, I'm insecure, and the other person's like, okay, I mean, that's fine. That has nothing to do with me. Like whatever, like have a nice day, you know, namaste. Right. And that's how that feels. And so it's true. That is true when people say that, that if you're good with yourself, people are good with you. And like there have been people often like gender me correctly, even if I don't have makeup on, and like my facial hair like still shows, you know, like the base of it or something. I don't know. Like you shave, but you still see it. But people will still call me ma'am, because I'm just so, I accept that about myself, and I'm in that energy. You know, I don't like make a huge amount of effort to like radically change my body, you know. So I do some, but yeah. So I just wanted to say that for trans people out there who feel like overwhelmed and that people are, yeah, doing something to them, that you can heal it in yourself. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I think what you said just goes to show how powerful our truth is at the core, and how it can resonate to healing to other people as well. One thing that is upsetting that I wanted to talk to you guys about, it's like not sitting right with me in my heart, is the Kentucky lawmakers that are saying that they're going to stop healthcare for transgender people, and also stop treatment for those who've already started. Whether they know this or not, like if you start hormones and you stop it, there's a huge risk in your health, like strokes, like a lot of different health issues, because you're like abruptly stopping it. And to put that many people in danger, not only can they not abide by their own truth, but also putting a health risk on millions. How do you guys feel about that? That's really upsetting for me.
What do you think?
I just feel mad. I just
You're
feel
mad.
angry right now.
What do you feel the upset is?
I just think it's a complete disregard to the human body, like the miracles of a human body, and like respecting a human body going through like a health process, or even like any treatment of not allowing them to safely complete it or safely like low dose it, you know? If this were to go into effect and they have to abruptly stop it, that's really dangerous. That's really dangerous to me.
Yeah. I wonder, yeah, does it feel like, is the upset that they're not respecting
I feel
people, or
like
is it
if I could, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Isaiah.
everyone?
Oh.
I was just gonna say it feels like to me, like once again, kind of similar to how people treat women's agency to get an abortion. It kind of feels like I think Nadia, you're right that there is this aspect of like just disrespect of the human body and like, you know, the process of going through certain procedures. But to me, like in a deeper place, it feels more like it's like the disrespect of like the individual's agency of their human body. Like it's almost like this othering, like these people, you know, this group of people, they're not good enough or worthy enough to like make decisions for themselves. And it just feels very similar to like the abortion thing. Like women, they're not worthy enough to make decisions about their own bodies, you know, like there has to be some external group making it for them. That's kind of like the energy I get.
Yeah, that clicked.
Yeah, right on the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also bring up, so if there's legislations and regulations on gender identifying, then one of our stories where an athlete will beat Anne Andre in benchmarking. I mean, I forget what that's called.
Oh, what was
Pressing.
Yeah, bench pressing. Why weren't there more regulations on his gender identity? Like, why weren't there questions of like, did you go through the process of this to identify with this gender for you to compete in this gender? Like, I really appreciate that they had that you can identify with whichever gender you have to your truth to compete. But why weren't there regulations to stop someone who probably wasn't identifying as a woman, but just wanted to make a show of it?
Yes, okay, so yeah, this is where we get into some stuff that there's a lot of controversy about in society on all sides, on any side of the spectrum.
Right.
So this person is just showing that, well,
I know he
okay.
was trying to show that there's an
Yes.
advantage to a male transgender who is competing with other women, but he did not fully to his core, I mean, I could be wrong, identify as a woman to even say that, to even go as far as to make that point.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a very it is a way of pointing out how like those who have, it is very likely that in general those who went through male puberty do have differences
This is
in
not
their
a feminine
body.
person.
But no, that is not a feminine person. But I mean, he does. I mean, that it's not accurate because he's not actually a transgender woman.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
the problem, you know, like we know relationships are messy, you know. And
yeah.
as we said before, like society is going to poke where it hurts. It's like kind of like I'm teaching to children right now. It's like we're going to tell you directly where it hurts. No
Right.
barriers, like if you don't have boundaries. And so like you don't have to get distracted on every little, I would say, story, because it would be too bad to have this distracting from the main points of people that are really identifying as trans and have transitioned and are trying to have their rights affirmed in sports and otherwise. That's just my feeling, but I'm very like not informed on this because it didn't like touch me as an European as it maybe touched you guys, but yeah, that's my feeling.
Sorry. No, I agree. And like my question, because I've been following this a lot, because there's in like Olympic weightlifting, there's been some controversy because I think last year a New Zealand trans woman qualified and I guess like pushed some other people out of like the heavyweight class.
Mhm.
But she ended up not, beating the competition. Like she did well, but there were women that still were able to like lift more than her or just as much as her. And so like my question consistently is like, I don't think there's enough evidence. Like you cannot conflate a cisgender man with a trans woman. Like, and even if they've gone through puberty, I feel like there's still so much that we don't know about the whole process of transitioning, especially if there has been like some hormonal process that has been undergone. And that's like the frustration I have just from like a curiosity aspect, because I'm an athlete myself and like I'm very interested in understanding more like, does there need to be another category of athlete? Or there's like so many questions I have, and it just seems like the issue keeps getting deflected. Like Yureen said, like there's not enough openness to like have a true discussion on discovering the truth. Like what really is it? And I don't know why I feel it most from like the female athletes. Like they're just really angry at trans women, and personally, I don't know. I don't understand it, but maybe I don't compete at a higher level get it, but I don't get it.
I mean, you'll feel differently like when we go toe to toe and I can outlift you, Andia.
Yeah,
and I work half as hard as you. Okay. So
Yeah.
you'll feel it.
This is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so my feeling on that is the same feeling as feminism, really. Like everyone is trying to do their own thing on their own side, and then like white feminists are trying to like bash feminists of color and things like that, and saying like transgender women are not real women. It irks me, first of all. Second of all, I feel like it's the second piece of like feeling powerless. Like women are already feeling powerless, and they're like, why are trans women trying to take our place right now? Which is not true, because I feel like most of the time we forget about how much work and training goes into winning an Olympic medal or a world medal. It's not just about biology. It's about the work that you put in. And by God, some of these women like put the work in and they win. It's not about trans women or women. And I feel like it just irks me, a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, but I also see the point, because I see it's something, I guess it's something that needs more research, but I also see the point, because it is true that it's true that if you go through male puberty, it alters things that are very, very difficult to alter, like again, to reverse, like your bone structure and your height and other things like that. And it is an aggregate thing. It's like an average thing, and there are always outliers. But I understand that, and I understand that, but it's not easy to go through at first. Like, because for me, my experience when we were talking about this amongst ourselves, we were mentioning how Krithy, who has had a career in the military, said the military in the US tried to even out standards for all people, so women and men would have the same physical fitness standards. And like women like failed the physical fitness standards, like mostly because the biologically male body is just, it performs at this higher level than the female body, because the female body is dedicated to different things. And that doesn't mean that you can't change and alter your body and everything like that. But I totally understand where people are coming from. So on the other hand, though, it's different for every person. So
I feel, yeah.
I don't know.
But for a trans woman, though, you're a woman, you're
Yeah.
a feminine being, and you're taking estrogen. So that also plays into it,
Yeah.
But again, like what you're saying, you can't take away from like those physical changes that maybe did take place. I feel like to me, like, I feel like it just needs to be a case by case basis, and there needs to be a lot more research done for a real, like, actual divine decision to be made, for a conclusion to be come to, because like it's different for everybody, especially for a trans woman or a trans person. Like, I don't know, I just feel like everyone's body needs to be looked at and considered, and like everything needs to just be looked at, and we really need to see what is really happening here. Is there an advantage? Is there not? When it comes to elite athletes and elite sports. And I would love to see the outcome of research and results like that. And because I've been an athlete, I've competed in college sports and everything, and I've seen some women who are beasts, and like it's incredible, like fuck. And I know but like I don't know, I just don't. And I also don't accept the fact that I just don't accept right now that the only conclusion would be to exclude trans women, or to like not have a place for trans women. I don't know. We got to find a better solution. There's a better solution. I don't know what it is, but we got to find it.
I don't know. Yeah, it's funny because I always struggled to build muscle, no matter how much I worked out.
And I built muscle so easily.
Even
But
before
we were opposite bodies, like I was always on my team. Like I lifted the most on my team.
He always, and he could like climb the rope in gym class, like climb up a rope. I could never climb the rope.
I loved that. That was my favorite,
Yeah, and that's what irks me, is that even in biologically born men and women, you have differences in hormones. And so that also plays out in like that's also biological for people that are not transgender. And that's so funny to me. And for example, like you also have ballet dancers, because they train differently, they're capable of like knocking out beasts of men. Just because you have to be able to support like at least 40 times your force to be able to be on pointed shoes for all day, for example, or doing that sort of stuff or that sort of stuff. It's so different for everyone. And so that's what I was trying to say about like, it's not just about being trans or not. I think that's the point. But maybe science will tell us the answers sooner or later. I think you're right.
The energy of the person really makes a big difference too. I would be so interested to see the research that would go along with that too, because I know it would tell us what we already feel and know. I just wanted, because when you were saying that, like, it's typical for like a woman or someone in a female body to be more flexible. I was sucked at the flexibility, and all my friends would like go all the way,
Right.
It's just like, because I'm just a boy. I'm just a boy.
Yeah, but you can't like say it uniformly, like every
no, you can't. But I just think it's
for
cool
our
that
union. It was that way.
Yeah,
or like for me, like when I was in like third grade, I tried like putting my foot behind my head, and I could do it, and I can put both feet behind my head. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm not ready for that, and etc. But
Anyway.
yeah, so
Oh man. Yeah, I just feel like there's so much we don't understand. And also like overall, most people are just totally disconnected from spirit and just the role that like the energy of your spirit plays in your self-expression. And so I just really don't buy this whole like man, woman, we're all, like there's just so much variation. There's just so much we don't understand. Um, and it has me thinking about how trans people are treated within our criminal justice system and like all the issues there because, in prison, like some states are better than others, but a lot of times like trans women are housed in male facilities and it causes like a whole bunch of problems. They're like very vulnerable to being victimized and just targeted. But you mentioned feminism, Yureen, and it made me think of like the feminist criminologist. Like within my field, like there's this group of women that just like for some reason are so angry like at trans women, and they even have an acronym. They're called TERFs, which is like trans exclusionary radical feminists. They like proudly call themselves that.
They're
And
they're in social sciences too. It's
yeah,
all over the world. Like,
yeah,
oh my God, yeah.
exactly.
But there was like a few years ago, like a very well-known TERF, and I don't even know why she's so well-known. I don't like her personally, but she like wrote some crazy article about why we should fear like trans women in our system, and like they should be treated as men, because she kept pushing this whole like they're just gonna if trans women are put with other women in prisons, they're going to rape women. And it's kind of like the same logic with like all the bathroom laws, like why a lot of people are uncomfortable with trans women going to female bathrooms. Like it's the same sort of like, they're men, so they're predators and like all this like BS. And so I don't know how you all feel about this. Like it's a topic that I think about a lot because I feel like it's the same thing with the athletics. Like there's just so much we don't know. And if there are trans people that are, going through the system, obviously I don't buy the narrative that, they're a danger, but
So
what
That's
is
been
the block?
insecurity speaking, I feel like what Sage was saying before
Yeah.
about being insecure. There's a feeling of like being unsafe. I don't know.
there's a lot of, I feel like we could identify like several things that are at play there. I wanted to say that like with respect to like cisgender women who feel that transgender women threaten or take something from them, like the thing about it is you have to understand that from the perspective of cisgender women, that they have had a journey of trying to gain more and more respect and equality, protection, and esteem in society. And so I like understand that. I have compassion for that, where they're coming from, and especially where, like, again, like with athletes, like female bodied athletes who work very hard, and then if someone does have a substantial advantage due to having a male body or partly male, then they feel like they're being undercut. And I totally understand that. But there's a difference. So it's important to like respect and accept someone's experience in all ways. And so including respecting like the fact that some trans women have gone through male puberty and some trans women have not or will not go through male puberty, and also respecting the experience that, of trans women or trans people who go into facilities that are meant for their gender and how they actually feel about it. And I feel like the truth of it is like a lot of it is just prejudice talking, because I don't know of very many cases where anyone actually was victimized by a trans woman because she was in a space where other women are. And I was also kind of like, just because somebody has genitalia in the anatomically male form, it doesn't mean that they even want to have sex with women or with someone with a female body, or that they're going to assault them. It like doesn't necessarily mean that, but I know it's sensitive. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the sense I get. I feel like there's a block with, they feel like they've been violated, victimized by male bodies, and I just feel like it's like this kind of, because that's kind of the energy I get specifically from this one person that I'm thinking of, because I've had some interaction with her. That's just kind of the energy. It just feels like she's had a lot of trauma in her past and with men, and it just seems like she's not wanting to really see the core of her upset, and for some reason like trans women really trigger that. And I would guess it's probably like that for a lot of cisgender women that feel that their femininity is somehow threatened. As a cisgender woman myself, I've never experienced that. I feel like it's just another, part of like life's variation, like the spice of life. You have all these great differences, and so yeah, trying to understand where that's coming from is definitely important, because I think there's definitely some healing to do there.
It's such a reminder of how people of color will grade their own people by color, because they'll say like, we suffered from the end of the hands of white people, but I don't respect that person because I suffered less or something, or caste or things like that. It's like this misplaced belief. I think we talked a lot about misplaced beliefs today. It's like this misplaced beliefs that you're going to be taken from through everything. And so the small gains that you've had in life are not secure. And so you're going to compete for that and be worthless and things like that. So we never talked about that really in this discussion on how it affected women. But I feel like today is a good example of how this is, because like we've talked about anger so much in the span of an hour. And it also makes me think of like Riley Gaines with Leah Thomas, and I was just angry she was.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
Yes, and so we were talking about that amongst ourselves in our chat, and yeah, so we were talking about that, like how she does she does, like, on one hand she does bring up a good point, because like Leah Thomas, like before she transitioned, yeah, she was like kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of competition in the men's category, and then she kind of, well, she won a Division I championship in the women's category, and how her body does influence that. Lung capacity too is also increased with male puberty as well. So yeah, and you can see I'm also really good at yodeling, so that's why a lot of women get really pissed that I'm so good at yodeling. Yeah, like here in the mountains of Colorado, nobody can really compare. And so I just have to live with that. I just have to live with the awkwardness of my yodeling skills and how it makes others feel. But I'm dealing with it the best I can. But no, I'm just kidding. No, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I think we don't need to compare ourselves, but you want competition. You do want competition to be fair, because otherwise there's no sense of like, I put in some work and then it gets me this result. You know, if you don't have a fair playing field, then it kind of erases that. And so I get that. But on the other hand, she's kind of mixing that point with rhetoric that is not loving at all, like misgendering Leah Thomas, like calling her, saying that she is outright a man, and she's not differentiating between like a male body, like the physical form, and the person's gender, like who they are. And so you have to be careful with that, and those are different things.
And that is because of that anger that I feel like the memes were not that good, even though she brought up a good point. So yeah, we just gotta be careful with our communications, and also like be good judges of what's going on in life. Like how much of this is our upsets, how much of this needs boundaries and research. It's all about balance, really, and really holding the peace, not getting angry. I think like it's time that as women, for the women in here, we get through expressing by anger. Maybe feels like we're going to the next level. It doesn't feel good anymore to poke very roughly where it hurts. Feels good to heal now. I don't know.
I do choose like these sports events to be fair, but it doesn't feel divine for me to create a whole other section for transgender athletes. Like it wasn't affirming of Leah's truth when she was angry and saying that that's a male's body, because in Leah's truth, she is a woman, like, and her energy was a woman while she was racing. And she tied with, forgot her name, she tied with her. So, someone who transitioned tied with someone who didn't transition. So it just showed like the phenomenon of a woman's body with training. I don't know, just like what Yureen was saying about casteism, it kind of felt like that with separating transgender athletes, because it's not honoring the energy that they identify with.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to bring up is like, as I grew up, I had excess male hormones because of PCOS. So if we were going down to the science of it, and if I was a athlete, or if I wanted to be an athlete, maybe I could have been like advanced because of my excess hormones or my hormone imbalance. But I wouldn't want to be put into another category, into the males category, because of that. I wouldn't want to feel different with my said gender because I had excess hormones, like natural excess hormones. So yeah.
Yeah, it's that balance between what is naturally given to us in terms of physical abilities and just like research. As Isaiah was saying, it's like there's a need for research, true research, but also true care.
Yeah.
Like stopping the care with barriers. It's like true care with like respect of everyone's bodies and intentions. That would feel much, much better. Even if we have to go through like uncomfortable process to do this research and advance.
Right.
Just like true care and communication.
Right. There isn't much true research and care within the woman's body itself, let alone transgender bodies. So there needs to be a whole area of more research, more known, even to take care of a woman's body.
Yeah,
So.
that's very true. closing thoughts?
I think that there's so much to say about this because it's such a nuanced topic with so many facets, and I don't know, maybe we can explore it more later. And but yeah, it's very deep, and it's been cool and illuminating. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to bring up that there was a Namibian runner, I believe, who that she's been told that she has to go on hormone therapy because she has naturally occurring high testosterone, and that it's not fair for her to compete with other cisgender women like herself. So you see how society,
Yeah.
well, society's like not sure what's fair and what's truly just here.
Yeah, we have a few cases of that too. So yeah, a whole other topic. Yeah, in the end, I feel like we won't run out of like transgender news, I think, in the near future. I'm glad that we like had this foundation of like the transgender special. Felt really great to have that conversation with you guys. And yeah, let's expand anytime transgender news come up on what we've already built. So thank you to everyone that watched our live from the Unionism discussion group or from YouTube. If you appreciated our discussion, don't forget to comment, tell us your thoughts, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our other parts of our world today, the Unionist perspective. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.